Hey, what's up? This is Sam from Dream River Designs, and I'm back with another build video. Today, I'm building two end tables out of these beautiful koa wood slabs that came all the way from Hawaii. The client supplied these slabs, and I'm really excited because they're gorgeous. First thing to do is remove all the bark so you get proper adhesion between the wood and the epoxy. Next, I wanted to try this idea that I had where I wrap the slabs in saran wrap and then fill the mold with water. That way I felt like I could get the exact volume of epoxy instead of just a rough estimate. It didn't go exactly as planned. As you can see, I can't lift it to pour the water into the bucket, and when I finally do pour it into the bucket, I'm like, okay, it's in the bucket. How much is it? And my slab got wet. So it didn't really work out, but whatever. Now I'm sealing the slabs. You do this so that air doesn't escape during your pour, and it also helps if you're using a liquid dye that you don't stain the wood with your dyes. This build ended up using, I think, 6 gallons of epoxy. I had hoped it would only take 5, but it ended up doing 6. So here you can see I'm mixing. You mix really, really well. You can't overmix, but you can definitely undermix. The client wanted to go with blue, with swirls, like an incandescent blue. Um, and so I used blue mica powder. I found this really cool tint, and I think that it looks really good. It's also very satisfying when you mix it up. So here I am whipping as many bubbles into it as I possibly can. Just kidding. You want to avoid bubbles, but you're going to have bubbles. It's whatever. Next, I use a tablespoon to check for opacity. The client wanted these tables completely opaque and with no transparency, and so I think I achieved that. And then here's the pour. After I poured this first mold, I quickly realized that I forgot to clamp the slabs down, so there's a quick scramble to do so, even though I probably had like 14 hours to do that, but I panicked a little bit. They were already leveled and everything, and so I had a tough time like getting them level again with the clamps that were supposed to go underneath. Anyways, I figured it out, and then I added a little bit. I added 1 more gallon at the end. So the bubbles rise to the top, and when they do, you can pop them with a blowtorch, and then you can start swirling. So this is really early on in the curing process, and these swirls will all dissolve, but you're basically just practicing looking for cool designs and stuff. And then right before it cures, you do a final swirl, and that's what you end up with. This is several days later. The epoxy is fully cured, and I'm removing it from the mold. It came off the mold nicely, which isn't always the case. I was happy with that. Once we get it on the router table or the router sled, we can brace it with shims and then secure it in place with hot glue. I have this DeWalt hot glue gun that I love. It's like super heavy duty and it puts out a ton of glue and it holds super well. I actually had trouble getting these slabs up after I had glued them down. And this is how the router sled works. You take really shallow passes to avoid tear out and chip out, and you just go back and forth. I think it took me about an hour to completely surface both tables. The bit that I'm using is a 2-inch wide surfacing bit from Grizzly. It's really nice. And it was the first time I had used it. I liked it a lot. It cut really well, and I didn't get a ton of tear out or chip out. And I was pleased with the result. We'll take a quick break for some laundry before we go to the table saw, where we're going to cut the tables to their final dimension. Reason I'm using gloves is epoxy is very sharp and you can cut your fingers if you're not careful. Saws are also very sharp, and so you need to be careful with those as well. And A lot of times gloves can be dangerous, but I had to do it there when the edges were super sharp. So I had my shop vac hooked up to the table saw, but as you can see, there's still epoxy chips that go everywhere. Probably need to do more shop vac laundry after this, but we got her done. Now we're on to sanding, which is definitely the funnest part of the build. I get to stand in the same place for 7 hours and do the exact same thing until it's perfect. So once you sanded out all the router marks, then you just work up the grits 80, 120, 150, 180, and then I think I finished up at 220 for these tables. Do a quick vacuum, and then now that it's sanded, I wanted to see what the swirls look like, so I spray it with water, and I'm very pleased with how it turned out. Client wanted an 1/8 inch roundover, so that's what I'm doing with this router bit. It softens things, makes it look a little nicer. And these are the bases that I found. I think I found them on Etsy. Client chose them. It's like a C shape. It's pretty basic. They worked well. I think I had to drill out the holes to be a little bit bigger, and there was a couple other things that I had to do, but overall they worked pretty good. Using threaded inserts to secure the base to the tables, and so you drill these holes, and then you insert these metal threaded inserts that you'll see in a moment. I have tape on my drill bit so I don't drill too deep, but it's not a physical stop, so you can definitely still drill too deep, and the worst thing you can possibly do is to drill through your table, obviously. This is a bit going in reverse so that I can countersink those threaded inserts, as they have a bit of a lip on the top, as you'll see when I insert them in a minute here. When you use these inserts, it allows you to attach the base and detach the base as many times as you want without damaging the wood or the epoxy. Next, I'm getting it ready for finishing by cleaning all the remaining dust that's on there. Not shown was another vacuum. You vacuum everything, and then you clean everything with mineral spirits. That gets rid of most of the dust. The client wanted me to use polyurethane for these builds, so I chose to use a spray polyurethane, which caused some problems, but we worked it out. I only had really long bolts for my threaded inserts, and so I decided to cut them down to size so they would fit. Of course, this did not work at all, which is weird because it did work for me on a previous build, but it created like a burr on the end of the bolt, and it didn't grab into the thread at all, so I just had to go buy new bolts. Like I said, these stands, the holes were a little bit small, so I just had to drill those out a little bit bigger. Because you don't want to spray polyurethane inside because it's harmful, I had to do it outside. And this was during the cold snap, and it was below 0, I think. And so it was not great. It was kind of splotchy, and you could see the lines where I moved the spray can. So what I would do is I would spray them, flip them, spray again, and then quick run them inside. So they didn't spend very much time outside, but it's still not ideal. I actually ended up doing the final spray inside, and then got the family out of the house and just finished up like that, and it ended up working out. This is a water-based polyurethane, which I like to use, I think it's best to use with epoxy, and it doesn't make the wood or epoxy yellow at all. It just kind of a nice clear sheen. Then I quick move it inside. When it's dried, you scuff it up with 220, or maybe I think I used 320 grit sandpaper. Get a rough surface, get everything smooth, scrape off all the high bits, and then spray again. I ended up using, I think maybe 4 coats of polyurethane. The 4th coat was the one that I sprayed indoors. So this would have been the 3rd coat, the second to last coat. And as you can see, I'm doing it at night. It's super cold, and you can kind of see on the left board there the lines from the spray poly. So I don't recommend doing this outside in freezing cold weather. This was before the final spray. I sanded one more time and I sprayed inside, and it ended up looking a lot better. But I do like how this turned out. I think it's a high gloss finish, and I think it looks good. Here's the final product. Thank you for watching Dream River Designs.